On May 10, 1774, Prince Dauphin Louis XVI became the King of France after the death of his predecessor, King Louis XV. However, by the time he ascended the throne, the people of France were starving and poor. They suffered a tragic poverty before they resolved to take their lives into their own hands and overthrow the despotic government that crushed them. King Louis XVI's death symbolized the fall of the monarchy and the triumphant rise of the Republic. After France left the 7 Years' War and the American Revolution, the nation was left heavily in debt. The country's seemingly endless warmongering had costed them millions, and heavy taxes had to compensate. King Louis XVI had been extremely ineffective with handling France's economic affairs. He renewed war taxes, and kept high prices on food such as bread and salt, which caused an outcry from the peasants. As the market became more industrialized and commercialized, old means of revenue couldn't be harmonized, and thus, France fell into an economic crisis. These heightened taxes took a toll on the peasants and farmers. In combination with the agrarian crisis of 1788 to 1789, peasants found it difficult to cultivate crops and to sell them. With the limited income they received, they couldn't afford basic living costs. The poor perished during winter, without heating material, and many others starved. Soon, the farmers became outraged. The peasants turned their anger into violence, directing their fury to the feudal system that caused their suffering. They led rebellions in what would be known as the peasant revolts. At the same time, France was undergoing a period of time known as the Enlightenment era. Philosophies of freedom and free will were developed, and the righteousness of having a monarchical government began to be questioned. People such as Montesquieu and Voltaire published works that voiced their opinions of liberty. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, a philosopher, had gone as far as to say, "Man is born free, yet is everywhere in fetters. He is governed, obliged to obey laws." What is it that legitimizes this subjection to government? This philosophy reached further than the influence of European philosophers, giving the people of France the desires to control their own lives. It wasn't long before the people's loyalty began to diminish. On May 5, 1789, King Louis XVI had called together the Estates General, France's legislative body made up of the clergy, nobility, and the commoners. This had been the first time they had convened since 1614. At the meeting, concerns of the economic deficiency were addressed. Jacques Necker, the current Minister of Finances during this time, had proposed the solution of new and higher taxes. The Third Estate, composed of the commoners, dissented. However, due to an archaic rule, each representative body was only allowed one vote despite size. The Third Estate was by far the largest and most varied demographic, but were overshadowed by the other two estates. On June 17th, the Third Estate broke away from the Estates General and sought equitable tax burdens. However, the clergy and the nobility refused to give in to the Third Estate's demands, who had now been renamed to the National Assembly with more political hegemony. By July 14th of the same year, rumors of a military insurrection to overthrow the nation circulated around France. That proved to be the last straw for the tragic suffering of the people, and they stormed the Bastille fort to secure gunpowder and weapons. A Parisian citizen by the name of Kerversac gives his eyewitness account, recalling, "The attackers, having demolished the first drawbridge and brought their guns into position against the second, could not fail to capture the fort. The governor of the Bastille could doubtless have resisted the capture of the first bridge more vigorously, but this base agent of the despots, better fitted to be a gaoler than the military commander of a fortress, lost his head as soon as he saw himself hemmed in by the enraged people and hastened to take refuge behind his massive bastions." As the people continued their siege on the fortress, they eventually claimed victory, however at the price of thousands of lives. Politically too did the people begin to act. The National Assembly, France's largest legislative body at the time, of whom it had gained power over time, quickly passed decrees that crumbled the old regime, from decrees declaring the rights of men to abolishing the feudal system. Act after act, rights were given to minorities and equality became established. It was during this time that the French Constitution was written and accepted.
So the National Assembly is formed out of the Estates General. The National Assembly declares for itself the goal of creating a written constitution, swears an oath to do so. It does so on the basis of being a body that represents the nation as a whole, not the social corporations, that is, the nobility, the clergy, and the commoners that made up the society.
Though the king was still not to be trusted. Jean-Paul Marat, a newspaper writer, and also known as the Friend of the People, had said, "Then there is Prince Louis XVI, who has become once more the supreme arbiter of the law, seeking to oppose the Constitution even before it is finished. Then there are the ministers, so ridiculously exalted, whose only thought is to return to the hands of the monarch the chains of despotism that the nation has taken from him. However, with the revolutionary flame still burning within the people, the king grew afraid and attempted to flee France on the 21st of June, 1791. It became clear to the people that the king was not fit to lead the country, as he tried to abandon his nation for his own survival. A year later, on September 21st, 1792, monarchy is abolished, and King Louis XVI is put on trial on December 11th. He was found guilty of treason and was executed on January 21st, 1793. However, even after his death, the revolutionary spirit remained. Maximilien de Robespierre, a prominent member of the newly established Committee of Public Safety, had gained control. The committee had stripped an individual's rights in trial, leaving death or pardon at their whims. Robespierre had spearheaded the movement known as the Reign of Terror, beheading anyone considered an enemy to the revolution, including priests, nobles, and porters. Approximately 1,400 people were killed by Robespierre's hands, before he himself was executed on July 28, 1794. However, after the conclusion of the French Revolution and the Reign of Terror, the nation was still not safe from war. From the French Revolution emerged Napoleon Bonaparte, a general during the war. He was ambitious and saw visions of France as more than what it was. On December 2, 1804, Napoleon crowned himself Emperor of France after seizing power by suppressing a royalist rebellion against the revolutionary government. He attempted world domination, invading several countries on a major scale, from Russia to England to Austria, the latter of which ultimately leading to the dissolution of the Holy Roman Empire. However, when he began to re-establish the aristocracy system, he was forced to abdicate and was exiled. During this time, France had reverted to a monarchy, of which was seized back into an empire when Bonaparte escaped his exile and returned to France. For years, France was constantly in a state of revolution, its government constantly flipping between a monarchy or empire, until the country finally became the nation it is today, the Fifth Republic of France. King Louis XVI was ineffective of leading his country, neglecting to fix the tragic suffering of the people. However, the people triumphed and took their own lives into their own hands to overthrow the despotic government that failed them. His failure serves to reinforce the nationalism and the country principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity in France.